Bright ideas from the Green Chair spotlight Central Wisconsin and the breakthroughs, innovations, and inspirations that make our state a very special place. This program is dedicated to Bob Williams, a lifelong Central Wisconsin resident. From his public relations office in Stevens Point, Bob's bright ideas moved across the geographic, ethnic, economic, cultural, and political landscapes. His genius helped to elect a governor, build businesses, grow medical research, improve patient care, nurture a university, guard the environment, and inspire many to achieve their fullest potential. Like the fast-moving rivers of central Wisconsin, Bob Williams was uninhibited in his presentation of ideas, large and small. This despite a lifelong battle with debilitating polio that, while limiting his physical abilities, never diminished his will to move Wisconsin ever forward. From a well-worn green leather chair in Bob's office, Wisconsin Innovation was created in partnership with some of the state's most respected leaders in politics, business, education, and healthcare. Prior to his passing, Bob gave his storied green chair to longtime friend, business leader, and philanthropist John Noel. Residing now in John's home office along the Wisconsin River just outside of Stevens Point, the Green Chair welcomes yet another generation of bright ideas, high ideals, and strong spirit. Hello, I'm John Lobbs, and I'm here with another edition of WisconsinEye's Bright Ideas from the Green Chair, from the home of John and Patty Noel in Plover, Wisconsin, a show which highlights the brightest ideas and people of central Wisconsin. Tom Lochner, Executive Director of the Wisconsin Cranberries Growers Association, is our special guest for today's edition. There's no question that Wisconsin is an agricultural state. If Wisconsin were a country, it would rank only behind Germany and France in the production of cheese. If Wisconsin were a country, it would rank only behind China in the production of ginseng. But if Wisconsin were a country, it would rank number one in the production of cranberries. So Tom Lochner, on behalf of Wisconsin Cranberries Association growers, thank you for being here.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks for the invitation.
First, let's talk about Wisconsin's cranberry industry, about its size. How many growers do you have, and what is the size of their production?
We have about 240 growers in the state of Wisconsin, and they operate about 275 different cranberry farms. And we have approximately 21,000 acres that we harvested last year. And off of that acreage, we brought in about 520 million pounds of fruit, which was a little bit of an off year for Wisconsin. We usually are around 550 million pounds of fruit. But that turns out to be about 60 to 65% of the U.S. crop, and over half the world's cranberries come from Wisconsin. So we're a major player in cranberries, both here in the U.S. as well as internationally.
And the cranberry growers are located in about 20 of the 72 counties, most of them in central Wisconsin, from Jackson County and Wood County, here in Portage County, and all the way up north.
About 2/3 of the crop comes out of central Wisconsin, and that's because historically cranberries are indigenous to Wisconsin. They grew here in the wild. Native Americans gathered them for eons before there was European settlement. And when settlement took place, they found stands of wild cranberries in central Wisconsin, what used to be called the Glacial Lake, Wisconsin, or the Great Swamp, people called it. And it's an area in central Wisconsin that the cranberry industry grew up in. Growers found the stands, they enhanced them, they tried to manage them and cultivate them, and that evolved into the industry that we have today.
What's special about the habitat and the environs here?
Cranberries are wetland plants, so they thrive in wetlands. They love an acidic soil. They like to be near the water. They don't grow in standing water. One of the common misconceptions is that cranberries grow in standing water, and that's probably because we show people pictures of cranberries in water all the time on television. But normally during the growing season, it's a dry culture. It's a vine, a low-growing, trailing vine. that establishes as a planting, and the fruit comes off of uprights.
Working closely with the water and the soil like that, cranberry growers obviously have to be responsible caretakers of the environment. Can you highlight some of the cranberry producers' efforts in responsible use of water, fertilizers, pest control?
We spend a lot of time as an organization these days taking a look at practices to make the most efficient use of water that we can, make sure our irrigation systems are high performing, make sure that when we look at making decisions on irrigation, we're doing it based on science, that we get water to the plant when it needs it. We don't want to overwater, and the same with chemicals. When we use fertilizers, we operate under nutrient management plans. So growers will spoon feed nitrogens to the nitrates, or excuse me, no, we don't use nitrates, but they spoon feed nutrients to the plant as it needs it during the growing season. And that's been a big change in our practices. And we also use different equipment to make sure we get that fertilizer spot on where it needs to be. And the same with pest management. We look at all options. One of the practices we use is to flood the beds in the spring for 2 to 3 days to kill the first hatch of insect pests. So we use water to actually as a control method. So growers look at that. We look at the new chemistries that are coming out. We practice integrated pest management so that we only use what we need and treat when we need. And that's resulted in significant reduction, not only in the compounds that we're using, but the types of compounds that we're using, some that are softer and more friendly to the environment. And that's been the heritage of the growers, that if there's a problem, they want to address it and they want to fix it, and they live there. That's their home, and they want to keep it in as pristine a shape as possible.
So you need a lot of water, but how important is clean water?
Oh, it's incredibly important to us. Water quality is a huge issue for the growers. Water is the lifeblood of the industry, and the reason we have cranberries growing in Wisconsin is because we have the resources. We have water, which is of the right quality for use of cultivating the crops. So we don't want anything in there. We don't want to put anything in there that doesn't belong in there. Clean water is essential to the industry, and growers have a strong ethic to protect it. And what we've found is that as we use water, and we will recycle it, use it on the marsh, and then pump it back into a reservoir or storage, we find that as it goes through that wetland system, cranberry farms perform functions of wetlands, and we'll find water will come out of the marsh with better numbers or of a higher quality than when it came in some circumstances. So we try to make sure that whatever we're doing is going to protect that water quality, because that's the most important resource that we have.
In these first years of the 21st century, we've seen a lot of dramatic, frequent changes in weather happenings. We've seen droughts, hurricanes, polar vortexes here. We have seen slightly increasing temperatures, which can mean a shorter growing season. It can mean reduced snow cover. Do these frequent climate occurrences impact cranberry growers a lot?
I think we've seen a change in management, and you try to adapt your management to the weather. And I had one of the growers tell me, and he was around for a long time, that if you're going to get in the cranberry business, and he told his grandson this when he came in the business, you have to go out there and understand that 85% of what happens on the marsh you can't control. That's due to weather. And you have to accept that and then focus on the 15%. And if you can't do that, if you're going to stress about the weather, you can complain about it, everybody does, but you can't really manage that, or you look at how you can manage it. I think our growing seasons have gotten a little bit longer rather than shorter, but growers manage for that, and they try and deal with it. We monitor it more closely because we have the technologies to do that. But at the end of the day, we're at the mercy of Mother Nature. So we have to accept that, and we have to grow our crops accordingly. And growers are concerned, and I was talking to a fellow the other day, and he said, if I ever figure out what an average year is, I'll let you know. But it can be challenging, but at the end of the day, you manage what you can.
Wisconsin produces, as you said, between 60 and 65% of the nation's cranberries. That's obviously pretty significant here in the state of Wisconsin. In the 20-county region, central Wisconsin, and for the state, what do you think the economic impact is of the cranberry industry?
And the last time we had a study done, University of California took a look at the cranberry industry overall and then broke it out by state. UC Davis did that study. They estimated the economic impact here in Wisconsin was about $1 billion on the state's economy. So we're $1 billion out of the $88 billion that agriculture contributes. We're looking at probably about 3,400 jobs for residents in the area, and that's people working on the marsh, but also people who are supplying us with inputs and then also processing and marketing and getting the fruit and the cranberry products to market. So that's pretty substantial here in central Wisconsin, and a lot of that economic activity takes places in a lot of the small towns. Pittsville has a major storage and processing facility. Wisconsin Rapids does. Toma, Babcock, they're not Warrens, they're not our metropolitan areas, but those cranberries are an important part of those little local economies that keep the schools going, provide jobs for people, and provide a pretty good way of life for people that are involved in the cranberry business.
Cranberry's place in the food chain. Everybody knows about Grandma's cranberry dish. But what are some of the other food products that cranberry's involved in?
Yeah, I think it's interesting because we always kind of joke that we're always a side dish to the meal, and we like people to incorporate it into the major part of their daily diet. But if you go back, probably in the 70s is when companies like Ocean Spray began to develop juice drinks and with blended juice, and the market took off then. And so we looked at other options. As an industry, they looked at other options besides Thanksgiving to sell cranberries, so it's a year-round product. And interestingly enough, today only about 3% of the crop is sold as fresh fruit and berries in the fall during Thanksgiving and Christmas. The rest of the crop is marketed throughout the year as juices, sauces, and dried cranberries, which are the latest product that's been developed. And that's given us great diversity and flexibility of what we can do with the product and help export sales as well, because we're an ingredient now. You can put it in all kinds of nutrient bars or granola bars. You can have it in cereal, you can use it in baking, you can use it in a wide variety of different products. So we become an ingredient and become part of that. And then there's, for me, I always enjoy the smaller companies around Wisconsin that are making specialty products. There's a place up in the Northwest that makes a phenomenal barbecue sauce. There's another one up in the Northwest that makes a phenomenal salsa. And those are available if you can find them.
Cranberry salsa?
Cranberry
barbecue sauce?
Oh, cranberry barbecue sauce is great. Even if you just have some regular barbecue sauce, mix some cranberry sauce in with it. It really goes well with poultry and with pork. We try to use that a lot. But so there's some of those great products like that out there. I think the last time I looked, there were probably more than 1,200 products on the market in the U.S. that contain cranberries. I'm sure it's much more than that, but we've been able to move from that Thanksgiving, Christmas into the 12-month around the whole calendar type of product. And juice drinks and beverages have been a big part of that as well.
If we're eating it and drinking it and using it in our baking, there must be a reason. How about the health benefits?
People have always talked about the health benefits of cranberries, and what cranberries also have is a very unique taste and flavor, and we try to encourage people to eat it because they taste good, but they're also good for you. There's been research that's talked a lot about urinary tract health. The American Kidney Foundation recommends that you have 6 to 8 ounces of cranberry juice a day for kidney health. There's been some debate, but generally I think there's an agreement that cranberries can help prevent or treat urinary tract infections. There's research looking at the urinary tract infection to see if there is treatment there. There's a special compound in cranberries that prevents bacteria from adhering to tissue. And so we're looking to find out ways to utilize that. But at the end of the day, we're not selling medicine, we're selling food. And everybody, you know, your mom and grandma told you for years, eat fruits and vegetables because they're good for you. And cranberries fall into that category. They're high in antioxidants, they have a lot of fiber, and they're just generally a very good part of everybody's diet and your daily diet. And we encourage people to utilize cranberries that way.
Let's talk about the state of the cranberry industry.
Cranberries are only grown on about 50,000 acres in the world. And there's more potatoes in Portage County than there are cranberries in the world, just for perspective. So, and it's very sensitive to, the price is very sensitive to supply. If we get short on supply, the price spikes up. If we get long on supply, the price spikes down. So when you look at the commodity price, there's been those changes. So you've got that underlying normal economic swing that you get. We're a perennial crop. We're not like corn where we can plant corn this year and soybeans next year or something else. You're in cranberries, you're in it. And if the prices are good and you're going to expand and take advantage of it, it's 2 to 3 years before you get a crop in response to that. So that tends to lengthen it out. But the commodity price dropped, and it was primarily because most of the fruit is sold in the beverage market as juice, and the beverage market has been weak across the whole category, and we kind of got caught up in that. So we saw commodity price go down. They're starting to come back now. We've done some things on trying to manage the supply. We have a tool at the federal level that allows us to limit the amount of fruit that comes to the market. We've used that the last 2 years to reduce some of the inventories. We're looking to grow international markets, and that's a challenge. And that's where we've seen a lot of growth. When I started with the association, we were probably exporting about 5% of the crop. Today we're exporting between 35 and 40% of that crop. So that's where the growth has been, and that's where it can go, and it's been in dried cranberries. We know demand and selling the fruit is how we're going to be profitable. And so that's where we're investing quite a bit of money in overseas markets, and we're seeing some returns in that. But we're going to continue to do that and try and grow the sales out of it. Hopefully, over the course of the next 2 to 3 years, we're going to start seeing returns get back to above the cost of production, and growers will start to be profitable once again. But it's been a tough 2 to 3 years.
You mentioned that 35 to 40% of the product is now exported. What impact does our country's trade policy and the recent tariffs and threats of tariffs have on Wisconsin's cranberry industry?
Well, it has a significant impact. I mean, we've seen, it's taken some time, but we're starting to see, at least conversations I've had with the processors, is that they're starting to see sales to China taper off because of the tariffs that were imposed. We were paying a 15% tariff to go in the first place, and they added 25% on that. So our fruit is going into China with a 40% tariff on it. For example, fruit from Canada goes in duty free. Same with the EU, and the EU is our largest partner. China was targeted to be our largest opportunity. So those do present challenges for us. But we've always had tariffs on our product going in. And the retaliatory tariffs certainly aren't helping, but we're hoping at the end of the day that the negotiations will continue, and that we'll end up in a situation where it's easier to market Wisconsin and U.S. cranberries overseas, and we can regain those markets and continue to grow. But there's concern that we've seen some decline in sales. It's had an impact, no doubt. Hopefully it's going to be a short-term issue.
Let's look more to the future. In 2017, the Cranberry Growers Association announced the purchase of land for a research station in Jackson County, I believe, the southern part of central Wisconsin. What you needed to harvest the crop that year and then begin building the station. Give me a progress report.
The need is heightened as we looked at the challenges we're facing, whether it's water quality or pest management or just all of the challenges that agriculture is facing right now. We needed science-based information, and we needed a facility where we could do some of the work that we can't do on growers' marshes. Some of the things that we're looking at is how long can you flood the cranberry vines before they die? So I'm not going to go out to a grower. We have a hard time going out to a grower asking them, hey, will you give us this bed and flood it and see if your vines die? Or things like that we can do on a smaller scale at the research station. So our foundation board made a commitment to raise a significant amount of money privately, and we partnered with the USDA's Agricultural Research Service. Senator Baldwin was a tremendous help to us, and Representative Duffy helped us secure some funding, increased funding for ARS that could go for cranberry research and go for the research station itself. The property is about 33 acres of cranberry vines. We're going to be taking about half of that out and bringing it up to today's specifications and what the best practices are. We'll be planting some newer varieties, those types of things, new irrigation system and all of that. We're also putting in some smaller research plots that can be independently controlled. Their irrigation systems and water management systems can be independently controlled, and that's where a lot of work on plant physiology will take place, and taking a look at some of the longer term questions that we have to deal with. We're raising money to put up a modest building. It'll have some storage area for the research faculty. It'll have some simple labs. It's more of a workstation where they can come in, collect the samples they've got, and then take them back to Madison for further analysis, because that's where the more expensive lab equipment is kept, and it doesn't make sense to duplicate that. But we've developed the plan to integrate that into our existing system, and we're pretty excited about it. Because not only does it give us a research, but it gives us a tool to do things, as we talked about before, about bringing students in. We've had some conversations with some of the technical colleges and some of the high schools to let's talk about how we can incorporate programs to get kids out to actually study on the marsh, to do some work out here so they get hands-on the experience. We'll have a conference center there, that room that can be used for teaching classes and bringing graduates or undergraduate students in from UW. The graduate students can work there. It's going to be not only a research but also an educational facility, and I think that's the thing that's exciting about it, because the opportunities are endless there. It's just a matter of taking advantage of all of them.
Number one in cheese, number one in ginseng, and number one in cranberries. Mostly right here in central Wisconsin. Certainly worthy of the green chair. Tom Lochner, thank you for helping us tell the story of the cranberry industry here in Wisconsin. I'm John Lobbs for WisconsinEye. Thank you for joining us for this edition of Bright Ideas from the Green Chair. And please look forward, as I do, to our next edition.